Hi everyone, my name is Anthony and welcome to part 1 of this week's Lunch and Learn, where we'll be talking about stress and how to manage it before it manages you. We want to mention that this video is intended for educational purposes and should not be interpreted as medical advice. For part 1 here, we'll be talking about an overview of stress, some signs and symptoms of stress, as well as common stressors that you may encounter. Let's start off by testing your knowledge. A stressor is a situation, event, or demand that causes stress. So what is the most commonly reported source of stress for adults? According to the American Psychological Association, the most common stressor reported is A, money, although work and the economy are usually next on the list. We want to note that money has been on top of the list for the annual APA Stress in America survey for several years. In 2017, a new option was added to that survey, which scored only slightly higher than money, but behind it, money and work were right there. Take a moment now to consider the top 3 things in your life that are currently causing you the most stress. What is stress? There's not just one simple definition, but in essence, stress occurs when there's a mismatch between the demands we experience and the resources we have to deal with those demands. The demands are different for everyone. They can range from everyday hassles, such as traffic, deadlines, and finances, to more important life-changing events like sickness, death, moving, and losing a job. The resources that we have to deal with those demands include things like time, energy, finances, patience, problem-solving ability, coping skills, as well as one's overall physical, emotional, and mental health. Each individual has a personal limit on the resources available to use for dealing with the ups and downs of life. So more on stress. Stress is not an event, but our reaction to that event. We do have control over our reaction to stressful situations. Stress is the tension or pressure that is a natural and often good part of life. For instance, the rush of adrenaline can help athletes perform at their best or assist a worker to finish a project. When it is managed, stress can be a positive thing. It's about perception. One person's stress can be another's motivation. Some people might find the thought of moving to a new town as an exciting adventure, while others might find it terribly stressful. One person might feel highly positive and motivated after receiving a challenging new assignment, while another might feel anxious and overwhelmed. Difficult life events can make it more challenging to limit the long-term impact of stress. For those who find themselves having to deal with numerous difficult life events, the accumulated impact of this high level of stress can have undesirable consequences. There are various health disorders associated with chronic stress. They range from heart health to mental health to our ability to complete daily tasks, as well as weakening our immune system. It is important to remember that what happens in the mind of man is always reflected in the disease of his body. So what is our body's response to stress? First, we perceive that stress is either big or small. Then our body prepares our fight or flight response, whether we're going to tackle the stress head on or step away from it. Hormones are then released into the bloodstream, such as cortisol, epinephrine or adrenaline, and norepinephrine. Our heart rate and blood pressure increase, our muscles tense, hearing and vision become more acute, breathing becomes faster and more shallow, perspiration increases, and sugar and fats are released into the bloodstream for quick energy. Our body's response to stress dates back to the dawn of humanity when we were primal beings. But how does that relate to today's modern life? Today, fighting or fleeing is rarely necessary or even possible. Modern day saber-toothed tigers are bills, traffic, deadlines, family, pressures, etc. The challenges have changed, but the body reacts the same way. All the responses that we talked about, like increased heart rate, surge of adrenaline, our muscles tensing, still occur without the natural release that we would get from fighting or fleeing. We can't fight with our computer or run away from an annoying supervisor, even though we might want to. This is why we need to learn other coping skills. We need effective skills today to deal with sources of stress. One of the first steps in dealing with stress is to understand how you respond to it, physically, emotionally, and/or behaviorally. The way we physically respond to stress can become headaches, stomach aches, or sweating. Emotionally, we might become irritable or have difficulty concentrating. And behaviorally, we might choose overeating or procrastination. So some keys to managing your stress. First, identify what is causing your stress. After determining and listing your usual physical, emotional, and behavioral stress responses, Take some time to identify the causes, like traffic, workload, disorganization, lack of communication, relationships, illnesses, etc. Next, categorize your stressors. Ask yourself two important questions. How important is it, and can I control or change it? If it is important to you and you can change it, even if it requires some time and or effort, take action. If it is beyond your control, stop fighting it and worrying about it. Learn and practice acceptance and coping skills to deal with that stress. A good way to start managing your stressors is first to categorize them. Stressors are situations or events that cause you stress, and there are several ways to look at and prioritize how you choose to deal with them. Stressors can be categorized as important and controllable. These are events or situations that are important to you and you have control over. Here you should use action skills. Then you have unimportant and controllable, which are events or situations that are unimportant to you, though you do have control over. So decide how much of your limited resources you want to use on something that is not so important. Then you have important yet uncontrollable. These are events or situations that are important to you, but you do not have control over. Here you should practice using acceptance or coping skills. Finally, you have unimportant and uncontrollable, which are events or situations that are unimportant to you and you do not have control. So do not waste energy on these things. Learn to let them go. Categorizing and dealing with your stressors is tough when you feel that everything is important and not controllable. This can happen when you lose your sense of perspective. Step back and really look hard at where your stressors in your life should be categorized. You may want to save your limited resources, such as energy, patience, time, money, etc., for those situations or events that are most important to you and are controllable. Keep in mind that the relative importance of something is individual. Different people will have different perspectives on what is important. This is okay. You do not have to value what other people value and find important. It is only important if it is important to you. Today we are focusing on the stressors that you consider important and whether they are controllable or not. Determining whether the stressor is controllable is probably the most important step of all. This will help you know whether you should focus on taking action or using acceptance, coping, and relaxation skills. Important and controllable stressors. These are events and situations that are important to you and you have some control over. These types of events have the potential for you to take action to help manage the situation and reduce your stress. Action is when you do something that actively changes the situation. Examples of actions include learning time management skills, using problem-solving skills, practicing assertive communication, or implementing money management. One example is your child has a school play on Friday and it is important for you to be there. Although it would be tricky to leave work on time to make it, you decide to come in early on Friday to make sure your work is finished up. You put in the time for the week so you're able to leave in time to see the school play and feel good about walking out the door. You also make sure to communicate with your supervisor and mention this event and your plan in advance. Another example is that keeping your finances in order is important to you, but lately you've been spending more money and you are noticing you've been feeling stressed about your bills. You have at least some control over how the money is spent, so you read up on how to create a budget and you start tracking your expenses each month. Focus on the stressors you can control in your daily life. Important and uncontrollable stressors. What do you do when something is important to you but you have little or no control over the situation? This can be tough and is when accepting and coping skills can play a big role in helping you deal with stress. First, consider if the situation is completely beyond your control. For instance, if you have been stressed about a particular deadline at work or a higher than normal volume of work, you may want to explore options with your supervisor such as reprioritizing projects, inquiring about additional resources, or discussing other ideas for efficiencies. You may be surprised about the result. When this is not possible, you can move towards acceptance and coping skills to minimize the negative effects of the stress. A more straightforward example of this type of uncontrollable stressor might be when a family member is seriously ill. This person is important to you, yet you have no control over his or her health condition. How can you help yourself deal with a stressor? How can you be a support for them without expecting that your efforts will necessarily fix everything? This will conclude part 1 of our presentation. We hope to see you back in part 2. If you ever have any questions about your health and fitness journey, we at The Place for Wellness would love to connect with you. Thank you.